All right, welcome to diorama building. So you know me as Tom Ask. I've been there a couple times before. And we're going to look at dioramas, and the advantage of dioramas is you can build your own environments. You can build environments completely to your whim and fantasy. There's no constraints. There's no clicking of mice. There's no rebooting the computer. There's no working with data. It's physical build. So some people have done this when they were children. Some of us do it even now. So it's a fun thing. It's again, this visceral connection with media that's sort of interesting. So we've got a small enough group we can actually build things today even. So basically what dioramas are normally built using plaster cloth like this, the bandaging, to kind of give you this sort of geomorphology that you want. And then this is a one that I have done in sections. So this section is complete. This section with all these accent features. This section has a base coat. This is a plaster, and this is what it looks like, before you do anything with the wood. So I'll pass that around so you can see what it looks like. So you can just pass it around and kind of examine it. You'll see how it's bound to the cardboard. And then this is a finished one. Okay, so this is underneath here is a bunch of crumpled up newspaper, which we'll do, and this is all done with plaster and some of these commercial accent pieces, which we'll talk about later. So, and contact cement, and these stones are made out of plaster, which I've got right there. And I'll go over tricks on how to make trees and even how to finish it. And when it's such a beautiful work of art, you put your name on the back. You never know, it'll end up with a Louvre or something like that. So this one, though, I mentioned before we kind of get started, this is done with like a thinner cardboard on a foam core. And I'm a big fan of foam core, which we did a couple classes ago. Because foam core is like cardboard for rich people. So it lasts a long time. It's dimensionally stable. It doesn't absorb water. And it's physically strong. So. And even while we look at this, people, it gives you good access, and people do some really interesting things cutting into this or into this. You can cut into the plaster and create caves, fountains, ponds, we've done ski resorts, we have Arctic scenes, all kinds of things. So this is sort of the wood scene here. So, well, if you just set that somewhere and use as reference. So basically, I'm going to work quickly. And we can do stuff together too, but I'm going to start with a cardboard box. And I've got some other boxes that we can work with. And you want to create your own landform. Normally, for those sort of things, you want a low front end and a larger back end because it gives you a sense of entry into space. So I'm going to cut that out. And then we can put newspaper in it, and I'm going to cover with this stuff. As far as safety goes, what's nice, I think this is almost like the first thing we've done where safety is not really an issue. The big issue with safety could be this, and I know in one case, it hasn't happened in my world, but I know with someone who's happened to with a plaster got in their eye. Somebody kind of puffed it and it went up in their eye, so that's really the only danger. If you're sensitive, and you don't have to work with plaster today if you don't want to, I don't care, but if you're sensitive to plaster, because it really does dry out your hands, we have some gloves there. So I'm going to quickly cut this out, and it's really boring to watch other people work, so this is not going to be very decorative. I'm just going to create some kind of interesting landform. And should really have some music. And good, there we go. And of course I have all my fingers, so you get that check, which is a common check. So anyway, then we can do this together because it'll be fun and we're small enough. What I'll show you here is we're just going to kind of build up some bulk for the plaster layout. So as you can see in the one plaster, I think this one had a canyon in there.
Yeah.
So once we put the wet plaster in, you can kind of push the paper around. You're the boss, and I've got this calibrated masking tape to hold the newsprint in. And I'm going to do some of this, and then like I said, I've got some more boxes so we can kind of participate. But what you want to do, the technique is to use newspaper, and you can kind of just jam things in. It's not so much the size, but typically you kind of do the edges and shove it in like that. So we are small enough, you guys want to grab some newsprint and go ahead and roll up some paper like that, and we'll put it in here if you would like. So just grab some of the newsprint, and I'm going to grab some too. Let's get hands on. And just shove it in that box. So again, it's not, you can just crumple it. It's not rocket science, but it is nice if you make it sort of flat on one side.
Oh, sorry.
It doesn't have to be physically strong. And then I'll take it in with the masking tape. So once we we get the newspaper in, we'll put the plaster in, and we can push it and do things like that. And I'll probably do this one. I'm going to try to work really fast so the workmanship will be low, but then you can do the other ones too. And once you get the plaster going, you can do some as well. It would be nice. And now I'd like to go over some tricks with these accent materials and painting and that sort of thing. So normally you can just use regular newspaper, but we are using newsprint. It's never been. And again, there's no right or wrong. I mean, you're kind of aware of the transition into the corrugated cardboard, so it doesn't look like it's a cardboard box. Like a lot of material, what you want to do is make it look like it did not come from the source material. So if you're working with a block of clay, you don't want anybody to ever see that block of clay in there. And the same with this too. I'm going to do override paper. Okay. Let's see. That'll work. Okay. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so I'm going to do the plaster. Now, unfortunately, so what we'll do is we'll probably do some kind of canyon. We'll work with what we have. And let me tape this in really quick. So again, this is just method rather than like beauty. And the plaster takes a while to dry, of course. And oh, okay. You want a couple more, maybe two more is fine. And we'll put a canyon in there, so that'll make it. Structurally, we normally double up the plaster along the perimeter to make it strong. So this is called a monocoque construction, which is where the shell is the strength. So the newsprint doesn't do anything to help us conform the topography that we want, but the strength is in the cardboard, the bottom, and the plaster. So again, I'm going to do this, and what you want to do, this plaster has different densities of plaster embedded on it. So this is a fairly low, this is like geek talk here, but this does not have a lot of plaster on it. So if you've ever seen people work with plaster and they squeegee between their fingers, if you do this, you won't have any plaster left. So it just happens to be this type of plaster. And I'm going to cut this real fast, a couple bands here. And there's not really an art to this, or I should say there's no science to it. Generally you want to keep it manageable, the strips. I'm just going to cut it off now. And one side usually has plaster and one side doesn't. You'll feel the bumpiness, and that should be the upward side. This is just regular water. I don't know if this is true, but I'll say it's true because it sounds true. All these things usually depend a little bit on water temperature, but this is strictly a drying process, so it should not, like it did with the casting supplies. So I run it quickly through. If I do it too long, I'll lose my plaster, so I like to go real quick through the water. And then I want it to bond to the cardboard, so I want it wet and I want it to bond wet. And again, what we want to do is, ideally we like to smear it and plug up all these holes, but I happen to know this plaster doesn't have enough plaster on it to do that. So with this particular plaster, rather than do that, I'll do a little bit of that, I suppose, but then I can actually add plaster afterwards. And the bottom line is when you're done painting and adding the accent features, you don't really see those holes anymore. So let me just do a couple more of these real quick. I do run it through really fast. And then I thought, I don't know if people want to do this.
You want me to cut you some more strips?
What's that?
You want me to cut more strips?
Yeah. I'm just trying to judge what we can do with, I didn't know how many people we'd have today, so I wasn't sure how much we can do hands-on. Let me cut some more. Let me cut a few more, and then, I'll take some volunteers on that, or you volunteers, I suppose, cut strips. And then, what I want to do is just cover part of it, and not the whole thing, and then let folks do it themselves. So if you just take some of the top, thank you. So you can see this goes really fast, and this, by the way, is really fun. And again, you'll be able to do this if you like. And it's cheap too. All the materials are cheap.
Do you have a local source for your plaster tape?
No, I get it online, I'm afraid. English Model Supply has a lot of the accents that you see here, like this sort of thing, so they're really good. They do a lot of train models. And, English Model Supply, well, it's not their fault. There's a system for making sort of dioramas for trains, and they have this beautiful foam system. And I remember looking at it, and it was hideously expensive. I mean, there was no way I would I forgot what it cost. It's not their fault, but it was like $9 for a small sort of foam wedge, which. All right. And what I like to do is kind of show you how to do a canyon or something. And when this dries, what's nice is you can do this in a couple stages. You can
Add more.
add more after you cut it, right? Exactly. So, and like if you were doing this without a rush of time, you might be interested in working with the seams a bit more. You know, trying to smooth them down, but kind of a quick second. You do want the seams to bond to each other because again, it's this Monaco construction. This is where the strength is. Let's put these in, then we'll do some things with accents.
Sort of rubbing and coaxing it together.
Yes, especially at the seams because you don't want it to be weird. And I'm going to put something in there interesting because this is incredibly boring right now. But you do want to grab along the perimeter, and I should show another trick. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go much further. But I can take this now and I can manipulate it in all sorts of ways. So it looks like, I desperately want to put my one there. Oh, thank you. This is it's like operations here. There's no big time rush. I should know how long it takes to dry, but I don't. Offhand, I'll say it overnight because that's what I do. But it takes some hours, so unfortunately, it won't. Okay. There. Now my gestalt is.
So how many renditions of Mount Rushmore do you have at home?
Exactly. So with this, I can while it's wet like this, I can do anything my heart desires. Anything. All right. I can push it. I can pull it. I can make wrinkles in it. I can do all kinds of stuff. All right. And then it's okay to spritz it with water. Like this, and then if you have a denser, like it happened to be where this portion there was more plaster, and that's really what you want to do. So depending on where you get your plaster, if you can spread it with your finger, that's really nice. I would do it anyway a little bit because it does help cover those holes. So, when you soak it in water, you want to kind of do it quickly, but I went probably faster than I had to because I'm like ADHD here. If you soak it too long, you lose plaster in the water. If you don't soak it long enough, you don't get a good wetting of the plaster. So plaster is a material that needs to be wetted all about the particulates. It's very important that each flock is fully hydrated to get it to make a good tight bond. It's like glue that way. So anyway, I won't go any further with that. Now the way the edges work, so I would just create this, and again, you'll do it yourself here. To do the edges, both in terms of workmanship and strength, what you do there is you double up the plaster, and then you have this nice trim edge here. So I'll show you how that works. So I soak it, as always, in the water. I fold it in half, and then I double it, and here, so what this means is you've got twice as much plaster as you normally do, so you can really do a nice job of trying to really get it to bond well, both to the cardboard and to the plaster itself. So that's that. And this is really fun. So I'm excited to have, we've got enough here. Like I'm excited that you can continue with this one. We've got a couple more boxes here you can do. So it's really fun. You can see my hands are nice and muddy. That's a good mud. It does dry your hands out. So that's basically how that works. You use your imagination to come up with some kind of basic structure. You put the newsprint in to kind of support it. It's not super important that you get it right because you can push this. I can still push things, and I can, like if I were to do a cave, which I've done, I usually let it dry first. But if you're doing a big cave, I use coffee cans to make sort of the form. And you put the coffee can in like this, and you can cut the cans. Like I save, well, I bet you everyone here saves stuff, right? Okay, so we're always saving things. So you can make your own little supports, so you're not wasteful. It's good for fountains. You put pumps underneath, and you can do all kinds of neat things. So where we are in this process is we've done this. So we've got this will harden up nicely. Okay, and then the second part, if you're fussy, it's nice to fill in these holes and get more plaster built up onto it. Because this is so light in terms of this plaster content, I'm going to show you that. And with this plaster, and also a means by which you can make objects. Okay, thank you.
Can you do water first?
Yeah, well, actually, yeah. What Jeremiah's talking about is what you normally do with plaster. Some people, I'm sure Jeremiah is in that camp, it's almost like a religious experience working with plaster. So you're supposed to let the plaster sit for a period of time in water and just absorb the water before you fully mix all the water. So I don't know if that's where you're going or not.
Oh, no, just sprinkling it until it makes little mountains on the top.
Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. Disregard everything I said for the last couple minutes. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, because, well, when they say when you work with plaster, I was trying to be organized. Okay, I've got this. I'm going to estimate this. All right. So it's 2 to 1 plaster. So what people say who are real zealots, I thought Jeremiah was a zealot. What Jeremiah said was right. This is plaster, really cheap. Was it $4, I think, or something?
Where did you get those?
Yeah.
Someplace.
Okay. Right. So I can just sprinkle this, but I'm going to do a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and make some plaster so we can make some structures. So I want to show you how to make structures with Super Sculpey and with plaster. So this is super cheap. So it's 2 to 1, and if you're a real zealot, you put water in there and let it sit. I don't know why, but you do. And the water becomes one with the plaster. Okay, yeah. It's one of those things. The good thing with plaster is if you put too much water in it, it is a drying process and the water will rise to the surface and it will dry. So it's good if you get the right concentration. It's the strongest and best to work with. So you try not to get too much water in it. But it's 2 to 1. You have to check the. There's different types of plaster. Some is double ground, like we often do with sculpting. This is El Chico. Only the best for you guys, all right? So mix this. And again, what you're trying to do is get a whole flock of water surrounding each plaster particle. So I made this too dilute for what I want to do. So I'm going to put some more plaster in. And actually I'm going to thicken it right now. Okay. Because I'm kind of molding something with this, I don't have to be so fussy. Okay. And when we did the sculpting, for example, we used polyurethane in silicone molds and this algasafe. But you can do the same with plaster. It's much cheaper. So, no, I need more plaster. Oh, wow.
Yeah, make plaster molds.
Yeah, you can make plaster molds too. Yeah. Have you done that?
Yep.
Yeah, good.
Maybe we'll do that next semester.
Okay, yeah, that would be nice. Okay, this is, I'm going to just put some on here. This is sort of this is a good viscosity for plaster, like that. And I can do all kinds of things. I'm going to thicken it up though. I like that viscosity. And see, now I can really, fill this all in and I can make it look really good that way. But I'm going to thicken it a little bit more. And what you can do with plaster is pour it into molds, which we're not going to have time to do here, but you can create a mold in clay, pour that viscosity plaster I had in there, let it dry overnight, and you'll get these hard formations, which is exactly how these rocks were made. These are plaster rocks, and they're hard edged. And the same is true with those rocks in that diorama. So these have kind of softer edges. So to get really hard, refined edges, you make them in plaster. And then, of course, with plaster, not only if your mold has hard edges, these will have hard edges, but you can break them. You can hit them with a hammer. Okay, so now this is like globby and stuff. So I can create whatever it is I want. Like almost sculpt with this. But again, the only advantage of plaster is it's cheap. So I can sit there and monkey with it and make whatever it is. Whatever it is my heart desires. Okay, cool stuff. And then I want to show you or talk about Super Sculpey. How many of you have used Super Sculpey? Sculpey. Okay. When we do cosplay, which I think is next week. We'll talk more about this, I suppose. But this is a real soft clay, really good stuff. You can bake it at 225 for 10 minutes per quarter inch. All these numbers are like, someday I'll get them wrong. I'll get them wrong, and everything I'll say will be wrong. I'll be off like a factor of 10. But right now I think I'm right. So 225 for 10 minutes per quarter inch, and it will bake up to a hard object. So I'll pass this around. Yes, the earthworms. Go ahead and mess with it. I'm not going to help. You split that in half. Just pass it around. So I can form this up, and it's really easy to work with. So it's like plasticine, but it's generally softer. Plasticine comes in different grades. But I can bake this, and it'll become, a hardened fixture. So I can make a horse or a monster or whatever I want, and then I can glue it to my object, okay, to my diorama. And usually I use hot glue. That's usually what I use. But you can use just good old PVA. That's fine. Okay, so that's Super Sculpey. And then I might wash my hands here just for
And that's literally the name of that stuff, Super Sculpey?
Super Sculpey. There's Sculpey and there's Super Sculpey. I won't go into the differences because I'll be guessing.
Are they cousins?
I think they're at least first cousins, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You can get colored versions of this, and it's like when I've worked with plasticines, the problem with colored clays is they get in your fingers a bit, so I like the neutral myself. I don't really use Sculpey, the colored Sculpey, it's usually jewelry, a good amount. You know, they make those beautiful, you know, they roll different colors,
Yeah,
and they
the
cut them and all that. That's all.
Mosaic looking
Right.
beads. Now, this is softer than the Sculpey though.
Yeah, it could be, okay.
Yeah, because I tried Sculpey and it's so hard you can't mold
Oh.
with it, but this is easier to work with.
I buy this by I have like is it 10 pound or 20 pound? I use a lot of this stuff because it does what you want. It's easy to work with. You can bake it, so it's hard like a rock, and you can paint it. You can chip at it. You can do whatever you want. So it's really good material for creating things. There's other materials too. I don't want to get too far off track. There's friendly plastic and some other forms, Infomorph. I think they're polyethylenes. I'm not sure. They're low temperature. You take them at about 175 degrees. They turn clear, and you can mold them, and they're plastic. Really neat. You don't get. I usually use something called friendly plastic. It comes in little beads in a little jar, and it costs $40 for that jar. It's a little bit expensive, but it lasts a long time. And when you make things, they come out kind of, I'll say, funky. I mean, because you're like making them with your hands, but they're plastic.
Now, how much is the Super Sculpey?
Super Sculpey is cheap. I don't know.
I'm thinking,
It's less than. It's about $5 or something.
I'm thinking maybe $250 a block.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap. Let me just wash my hands real quick. And
But it's a small block, so if you're going to do a lot of building,
Yeah.
it adds up.
right. Okay, let me just get that out of there and go. Okay, if you want to, what do you want to do hands on? So I don't do too much of this. Okay. Okay, then there's these accents. So what we'll do is I'll show you how to create those accents, and before I do that, I'll do trees. Doing the accents is pretty easy. I'll mention too, once this dries, you want to paint it with some base coat material. And there's some really neat ones out there you can buy. You can just spray paint. You just want a base coat. So if you're doing Mars or doing the moon, it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing the Earth, terrestrial forms, normally we use almost like a yellow color, kind of what am I thinking of there? Like a brown yellow mix gives a good base tone. But you can do that's what you can see it in there. Okay, and then we paint everything, let that dry, and then we cover it with contact cement, which I'll go over in a minute, but I just thought just to be eclectic. If you make a deciduous tree, what you do is you go to English Mouse Supply or online and buy them. If you try to make one, it will look bad. Almost guaranteed. Almost guaranteed, all right? You'll think you'll spend all this time, it's going to look bad, so just buy one. That's my modeler trick. Cheat. But if you're making a coniferous tree, which you can see in that one back there, they come out pretty nicely. And the way you make coniferous trees of different sorts is you cut a triangle wedge from foam, and you can kind of go to town if you want to shape it. But the trick is you form it with your fingers in a triangular shape, okay? And then I'm going to trim the bottom. Well, actually, it came out pretty good. But then I'd spray it with contact cement, which we're going to make some, like cheap, because this is really a cheap project. Spray it, fill it with accent material, push in this accent material, kind of push it into the foam, and then do another one on the surface a bit and push that in, and it really looks good, I think. And then you just glue it with hot glue. Boom, you're done. Okay.
Happy little trees.
It's a happy little tree, but that's not a finished tree. So then I need to go over, how to make contact cement. Contact cement for poor people, so most of you are college students, so you're interested in that sort of thing. And I need to, I'll use this for, okay, sound check. All right, so the ratio is 4-to-1 for making cement out of, craft lumber, PVA glue, And in fact, I've also got a system somewhere, right here. You can get these little spray bottles, which I'll do both. This is a little more straightforward. But then you can just make it without a spray bottle and paint it on. So hence I brought a paintbrush, which is the biggest challenge with this class, is I have to bring all this junk over. And I'm in a far building, so once I get through that, I'm all right. So the way this works, I even brought my own glue in there. I didn't use your glue. I didn't know you had some. So I put in, since we got a bunch of people here, I'll put in, I'll be doing this, I hope. Okay, I'm going to put in, fill this up about a quarter of the way. And if you get into full geek mode, which we'll do on this one, we'll fill it up half halfway up with water. We'll shake it really good. Make sure that the water and the glue mix. And of course, this glue is a bunch of particles and water mixed anyway. Some kind of solvent. It's glue in this case, or water in this case. And then, there you go. So it's 3 parts glue, craft glue, let's see, 1 part craft glue to 3 parts water. So this is regular water. And the nice thing about being grown-ups, which we all are, is nobody says, be careful, you're making a mess, right? Oh, I said it wrong. You're supposed to, if you get into geek mode, you do it half, well, no, you do it half with water, shake it really good, and then do the rest of it with water, but whatever. Somebody spent too much time considering how to make cheap contact cement. It's really not rocket science. But anyway, that's how you're supposed to do it. So I've got this mix, and I can spray it now, and it'll give me a contact cement. But I can also just do it as a can and use a brush and paint everything with contact cement. So this is wet, so I'll see how it behaves, but I just sprayed and there's other types of just commercial contact cement. This is made almost glue and water, so I spray that, and then you take an accent material, and what looks good with accent materials is there's different colors, and usually a dark green initially, followed by a light green suggests depth, so that's a trick if you're doing grass. And you can get there's sifters you can get, like a salt shaker, which, not a salt shaker, it's gotta be a good salt shaker. And now what I can do is what's that?
Spice jar.
Spice jar, yeah, would work well. Or you can take a parfait cup, especially if you have a lid on it, and burn some holes in with a match. So this is how I cover it, and it's raining accent figures. So, now I don't have contact cement everywhere, and the plaster is wet, so this is, okay, and then here's a lighter variant. And you can buy browns and tans and all kinds of stuff. Okay. And actually, let me do the tree. So the way the tree works, as I mentioned earlier, is you spray it, get it nice and, it's just water and glue, so you're not going to hurt anything. Spray it. I'll use a dark green.
Just roll it around on the green on there.
What's that? Okay, I just want to do this so you can see. Okay, and then I push this in. Usually I lay it on the table. Just to push that in. Oops. Okay. It's like soap, or it's almost like soap. Okay. The only trick with it, I would say, is you don't want clumps on the outside, because it does look bad, so you want to push it in. But after it dries, you get rid of those clumps. So there's my little sort of happy tree, although I'm not happy. Tree's happy, but I'm not, because I didn't get the bottom very well, so anyway, there's my little happy tree. Okay. All right, where's my... Okay, and then another little trick, you can buy these accents, and these look really good. And I use them with full strength clear glue or craft glue, and just glue them right in. So with that, so this is kind of like I was mentioning with deciduous trees, this is sort of cheating, because they're like ready to go. And these are very good for covering gaps, things that you don't want to show, like something that looks really stupid, you can just cover it with these little guys. Okay, and they look really good. And there's different types, there's different colors. And then finally, before we do our own thing, we do it together. As you can see, that's it. So it's all creative, there's no right or wrong. You're doing the plaster, a base color, that's important because you don't want the white showing because that will look really bad. An accent, which you buy, the only cheap way I know how to do that is to get sand or dirt, especially clay type, and use that. But I don't know how to get a green naturally that will last, I just don't know that. And then, that'll give you your base, and then you just get creative. You add plants and whatever it is you want. When you add features like this, these bushes are really good to cover the lines here often. And then, of course, you can paint, like this plaster. I didn't make a plaster piece today. Well, you can paint this, with different types of colors to get the effects you want, to get rock effects. And what's interesting with nature is everything is sort of heterogeneous. You don't want it to look uniform. Because people will do that. They'll take this because it kind of looks pretty, and they'll make it cover everything. It looks just like a golf course. It looks super boring. So you really want those sort of distinctive elements that you see in nature to come forward. And then you can buy these rocks and such. So I think, yeah, you do, that's sticking it up nicely. Okay, that's a diorama, and you just go through this. It's really fun, it's peaceful, it's clean, it's non-toxic, and once it dries, you can cut it out and go further with it. Any questions before those who wish can build their own? I've been saving this plaster for probably 2 years for this occasion, for times such as this, so it's been rich. Okay, well, very good. Those that wish can finish this up with plaster, and I don't quite know how to do this in a democratic way. Who wants to make, Ty, you want to cut a box up?
Yeah, I'll cut
Okay, why don't you grab one of those boxes? And who else wants to cut a box? I should just throw the knife way up in the air and see where it lands. Anybody?
It's the safety.
Okay, yeah, there's 2 boxes here, so go ahead and just cut it up.